God to lead you on the correct path, and how to make sure how it is God is to pray for him to lead you, and then it will show up soon, but not like in a second or like right now. But if you're on the wrong path or you feel like it, just make sure that you pray to God that it's the right path and you pray for him to lead you. That's all, guys. Love you. Bye.
We're gonna glow through it.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Glowing Through It. My name is Jerrell Connor, and this is my wife, Kytia L'amour. And for today, I had a topic, I guess that like the loose title is like leadership or accountability. And I have a lot of notes because I don't want to miss certain things, so I'll be looking down a bit. But this whole conversation was sparked by a talk that you and I had about a week ago. And I've had a talk and conversation online with a couple other groups of people as well. But it was sparked by a recent incident or situation that happened in a sermon by Pastor Mike Todd, who's the pastor at Transformation Church. And the clip, Michael Todd had his brother on stage and he spit on his hand, and it was a lot of spit and it was really gross. And he put it on all over the guy on stage with him, who was his brother. And it's kind of like an illustration about what Jesus did with the blind man. So the controversy that came out of it, if you haven't heard, I know most of you probably have already heard about it, but people were grossed out. Some people couldn't hear the message. They turned it off. They were offended by it, and it was just too much. So a lot of people had a really adverse response to just that part of it. So I went back through, because I had seen the clip a week ago, and we had talked about it. And then I had seen parts of it. I didn't see the whole sermon until like just the other night. He released an apology video where there was really no apology. And he basically said he wanted to confirm and validate that people this had affected them and that he took it too far. So he said, I acknowledge that, and then he made light of it and made a couple of jokes about it, and then talked about his brother still being bald or something and not healing him. But to me, I feel like if he was like repentant about it, then he would have said, I'm sorry for doing this. And it would have been really easy for him to say.
Well, he said sorry, but he made it.
He didn't say sorry, and I didn't see sorry in it at all. He said, I acknowledge that you guys, it went too far.
Okay.
And there was no apology that I saw in the video. He said a lot of words around it, but it seemed like, hey, watch the full lesson because you're going to be blessed by it. And I think it's a great lesson, but acknowledgement versus remorse is different. And so that was something that stood out. And it would have been easy. I mean, it's easy for me to say here watching it later, but if he had just said, hey, the lesson was about vision and hearing clearly from God. I missed it on this one thing. Even if it's a small thing or if it's a great thing, whatever. I missed it on this. And this is a great illustration itself and a learning experience to say, this is why it's important to hear from God on everything. If you're structuring a sermon, if you're going to a job interview, if like whatever it is, because so much of the sermon was about like you have to hear clearly. If you don't have clarity in what God is telling you to do, then you have confusion. That's exactly what he said.
Oh.
And then in this moment, he's saying, I went too far, which is an admission of this was not from God. Because if God told him to do it, then it wouldn't be too far.
So I'll go ahead because this isn't all about Michael Todd.
Yeah.
It's not like we're here to, like, we're calling out preachers or, like, that's not what this podcast is. It's like Jerrell was saying, it's like having accountability and leadership kind of a thing. There was a friend who texted me and she was talking about the movie she saw, and it was Redeeming Love. And I had seen the poster for it. I think I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, wow, this looks like a really sweet story. And it's about God's redeeming love. And you can research more about basically it's like based on a biblical story, and so brought to modern day real life. So my friend did say though, like, but it does have, sex scene, and because she's a prostitute and there's some abuse in there and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, and I just kind of was like, I thought it was a Christian movie. And I was like, maybe it's not a Christian movie. Maybe I thought it wasn't a Christian movie. But then I saw some other people reacting to the fact that there are sex scenes, and they were basically talking about how they really went too far. Like, married people can have sex. You're allowed to do that. But am I going to do it on camera? No. Am I going to take off my clothes and pretend to do it and emulate it in a way where you kind of feel like you're in the room? No. So I feel like in a similar way, when it comes to especially Christian content, and if you're trying to give biblical examples about God's love or about vision from God or redeeming love in a marriage, or even healing from trauma, those kind of things, I think these lessons are so important. But I do struggle with, like you said, like, how does this go through all of these filters and then it comes out like this? Like, how do you have these really intense sex scenes that people are very uncomfortable watching? Like, a lot of people are just like, I saw it with my husband and we were like squirming in our seats, or like, I saw it with my church group and I was sitting next to my pastor and it was the most uncomfortable moment of my life. And I was like, there's two sides of it. Some people are like, well, you need to have these extreme examples. It really catches people's attention. And then you have people who are just like, this is crazy. Like, how did this ever happen? Like the movie should be banned, So we're not on either extreme side of it. It's more just like, I think, a reminder to keep praying for people in leadership positions, and especially with Christian content, because we are Christians, we are believers. Like, that is our focus, is bringing the gospel to life, sharing God's love. If it's tainted, if it's poisoned, if it's extreme, if it's turning people off because of certain decisions people are making, it's like, Lord, please, like, the last thing we need is for people to be like, see, this is exactly why blah, 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 Christians are hypocrites, Christians are this, Christians are that. And it's like, we need to have that really clean and pure obedience, and to really make sure we're hearing from God, because we make mistakes. Like, we've made mistakes this month, and we're not perfect, but we also need to be praying for each other and interceding, and we need to be holding ourselves accountable.
Someone brought up Matthew 7:3-5, which is probably familiar to you. It says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." So a lot of people use this to say...
to remove.
Yes, that last part was what I was underscoring, because people use this as a way to say don't judge. And that's not what the scripture's saying. It's not saying that. It's saying deal with your own issue first, so that you can... It's very important that it's the eye. It's talking about in the eye. It's saying, and this is great because his whole sermon was about vision. And it's about you get the thing out of your own eye first, so that you can see how to help your brother. It doesn't say never help your brother. It says leave him alone and then do your own stuff. It says...
He liked that speck. He bore with that speck. That's
It
a good
said-
speck.
It says you take the plank out of your own eye, then you can see, so that you can clearly remove the speck from you. Still correct him. You still help him. One of the essential takeaways that I hope people get from this is that pastors, ministers, church leaders, these people are all people. They're mortal humans, and just like you and I. And they should be treated like that.
Yeah.
So this is a concept that does go both ways, because that means you shouldn't put like a standard of perfection on them. Like, oh, he's a pastor, so he couldn't possibly ever do anything wrong, or else we're going to lynch him, or we're going to like cancel him, or shut down the church. No, don't do that. But also, they shouldn't be on a pedestal where they have no accountability, where they're like untouchable. So everything should be in love. So when you're dealing with things like this, love your brother, treat him like your brother, like the first verse in Timothy. And I think when you handle it from that standpoint, you're loving people, there's not hate or animosity in your heart, then you can have these conversations, you can reach out to people I don't expect to ever talk to people who made this film or people like at Transformation Church. It's not about that. It's just about sharing about a conversation where we can be looking to accountability and expect that from ourselves and expect that from other people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this clip. If you want to see more of us, you can go ahead and get your membership at Liftable TV. Liftable TV is an online streaming platform that has so much original content and things to uplift you in your walk with the Lord. If you want to go ahead, I have a link below if you want to check them out and see what they are doing over there on Liftable TV. And if you want to hear more, you can go ahead and listen to the longer version of this conversation anywhere you get your podcast. We're on a bunch of different streaming podcast platforms, and you can search Glowing Through It to hear more. Okay, you guys, we'll see you later. Bye.
What is Liftable TV?
So I want this to be different. So
We're back!
We got a lot to talk about, people. And I'm just on the introduction. Imagine this.
We want media that we can lift up to God.
Uplifting emotional content.
Real and meaningful, very wide variety.
you don't want to miss it.
Are you living in peace?
That is awesome.
You guys, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to get a like and also a subscribe and then the notification bell, and make sure that you stay tuned for our other uploads, okay?
This is the light and I'm gonna let it show it away. We're glowing through it.